HYBE is in the middle of creating a huge interconnected universe through some of their music videos and some upcoming webtoons. And today I'm going to show you how it all works together and some of the rules that they've established in this universe that you can look out for in upcoming releases. Hi friends and sunflowers, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. I made a video similar to this over a year ago and will definitely be repeating a little bit of that here. Think of this as an update to that one. I'm even going to start it similarly. Last time I highlighted something that Bong Si-hyuk, CEO of HYBE at the time, which was then called Big Hit, said.
이를 위해서 우수한 작가들과 함께 풍성한 시나리오를 기획 개발하고 그 이야기에 가장 적합한 미디어를 통해서 스토리텔링 IP의 스토리를 함께 호흡할 수 있도록 다각도로 시도할 것입니다. 그리고 멀티 레이블의 아티스트들에게도 순차적으로 스토리텔링을 적용해 갈 것입니다.
In the recent 2021 community briefing, they also said this.
하이브는 오리지널 스토리 사업을 통해 고유의 스토리 IP를 직접 기획 개발하고 이를 기반으로 하는 컨텐츠들을 보다 풍성하고 다양한 방식으로 선보이고자 합니다. 오리지널 스토리에 하이브의 다양한 아티스트들을 캐스팅하는 개념으로 함께하는 것이죠.
So the universes or the original stories that we announced today are sort of an extension of our previous universes and our previous lores, but they are so connected, but they're different. So it's a different concept. We have our original stories onto which HYBE artists are casted as a collaboration.
Basically, they emphasized that they wanted to focus more on the aspect of story and wanted to collaborate the artists to tell this story. And to top it all off, back in 2017, in an interview with Rolling Stone India, Namjoon told them that the company, Big Hit, had a large focus on making lasting impact, specifically similar to large, memorable franchises like Star Wars and Marvel. In fact, Bong Si-hyuk has actually told people reportedly that he's a huge Marvel fan before. I can't actually find the source for this, but it is clear that he does want to create some sort of Marvel-like universe. Think of how, Spider-Man has his own story, and then Iron Man has his own story, and Thor has his story, and the Hulk, and then they all come together in the Avengers. But they each had their own individual stories first. They're all just happening in the same universe, but you wouldn't necessarily think oh, yeah, of course Thor's in the same universe as Spider-Man, because Thor is over on his own planet, you know? It's the same thing here. There's parts where you think it's possible if they wanted to, it could overlap. And it does in certain cases. And I do think it is one all, story universe, but I also believe that it's a multiverse, with multiple dimensions, because of Enhypen mostly, but I'll get to that. Anyways, my point is, I believe that we're seeing Bong Si-hyuk's dream come into fruition. And we've seen some evidence of this being in the same universe before, in case you're still skeptical. We have a recurring character between BTS and TXT's universe, and that is the cat with galaxy-like blue and green eyes. This cat appears both in BTS's notes and in their Story Universe game, and also in TXT's music videos. Several of them. Also, I just want to reiterate that this is a fictional storyline. Unless I say something is referencing our actual reality, the way that maybe Enhypen's sometimes parallels idols and the idol culture, I'm never ever talking about the real members. If I say these two people are fighting, it's within the context of their story, but not the real actual people that exist. Also, this is an ongoing theory based off of fragmented storytelling that's intentionally vague, and, I'm only one person, so as such, I might be wrong about some things, and if I have to correct anything, just check the pinned comment on this video, because that's where I will add corrections or updates if needed. It'll be in a pinned comment at the top of this video, so yeah, check that. Anyway, first, let's address a major question that you might be having. Who is in the HYBE Universe's story? So, I'm gonna list a few groups who are definitely a part of this universe. BTS, who have their HYYH, or Save Me, webtoon sort of story. They've also recently announced that they're going to have a new story that's apparently not directly related to Save Me, and that is called Seven Fates Chako, and it's a webtoon that's coming out in January. These two stories are each their own universe, but I do believe they're both part of the HYBE Universe. TXT with their story, The Star Seekers, pretty straightforward. Enhypen with their story, The Dark Moon, which might also be associated with a big hit Japan boy group rumored to be called Ant Team or Ampersand Team, and that's because some confirmed members of that group have actually appeared in Enhypen's music video as the opposing team members, the werewolves versus the vampires. We had Gfriend, who has unfortunately disbanded. Their story was called The Tale of the Glass Bead, and it had been rumored to be connected to BTS for years. Long before Source Music was actually acquired by HYBE. And the reason for this is because the CEO of that company is reportedly very good friends with Bong Si-hyuk. And I'm mentioning them here now because not only were they in my previous video about this, but their story had a lot of elements that created a lot of ground rules and are still being used very frequently in other stories today, including rules about time travel and the glass beads that I'll talk about later. There's also an upcoming girl group that we don't have the name of currently, but we do know that there is a webtoon associated with them called Crimson Heart. So HYBE also owns Pledis. And I do have some things to say about this. I got a lot of questions about it. So first, I don't think that anything that 17 or New East released before the merge had anything to do with the HYBE universe, not the same way as Gfriend. Gfriend was its own special category because they were good friends. Currently, it seems like 17 will continue to focus on their own productions, their own music production and composing work, and likely they won't be joining into the whole storyline thing that the previous groups are part of. But sometimes there are things that appear in their concert VCRs and specifically their Japanese music videos that make me think, wow, if they wanted to, 17 could appear within the universe and have some sort of, I think they'd have a parallel universe story. They could be written in if that was something that they wanted. But with the way it's going now and the way that they advertise 17, I don't think that's the direction that this is going. New East, on the other hand, is a little bit harder to say. New East previously had separate storylines for each of their albums that kind of blended together, and these had very specifically out there themes that could easily be retroactively written to fit into the HYBE universe. Things like dreams and doors that lead to somewhere completely different, and a strong focus on memory and past lives. But their recent releases haven't had that same level of storytelling, at least not that their past ones have had. If they release something in the future that's more story-based, I would be inclined to say that they are becoming a part of the HYBE universe. But at this current moment in time, I'm not sure that they are. So I'm not going to outright ignore them or anything. I'm just waiting to see what'll happen. I also don't think any of the other artists in HYBE labels right now are a part of this universe. However, I do think that there's going to be several new upcoming groups that will be a part of this story. Obviously, there's the girl group with Crimson Heart, and then any future island groups, both boy and girl groups, I believe will probably have their own story, similar to how Enhypen has it. By the way, make sure that you're subscribed, especially if you want to see these, because of course I will be covering all of these groups as they come out, even though that's going to be a lot. So yeah. I also want to say, HYBE America exists, and they did say that they also wanted to create an original story thing. I don't think that people under Ithaca Holdings and Scooter Brown, I don't know how to say his name, I don't think they're going to be joining the universe necessarily. So I don't think we should be expecting to see Ariana Grande or Justin Bieber in crazy scenarios with time travel that somehow also follow these rules that I'll talk about. Probably. I don't know, the world is a weird place. Because if they do give them a story name, the same way that the others that I just talked about have story names, it might be related? It's just weird to think about. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the rules of this universe that they've shown us so far. Multiple realities, wormholes, and magic. So, as I've mentioned previously, this is a multiverse, and one of the many things highlighting this is actually a song from Enhypen called Outro Wormhole, and this line says, "Multiple dimensions wait for us." In Enhypen's story, it's heavily implied they can travel between different dimensions, and that one of those dimensions is related to what looks like a digital space. Remember this because it's going to be important later. Obviously, this travel is possible through the use of wormholes, the title of that track. Lucky for us, wormholes appear all over the HYBE universe. It's hinted at several times in the BTS story, where Jungkook seems to see one at the bottom of a sinkhole. TXT have been seen with several. Some of them take them to their past, and others seem to take them to another major point in their storyline, but also in the HYBE universe, called Magic Island. And this brings me to a major point of like how the HYBE universe works and the idea of multiple realities, because I believe that the idea of what Magic Island is a central theme in HYBE's universe. This reality that holds Magic Island is hard to explain, but I'll do my best. I think it's actually based off of Carl Jung's theory for the collective unconsciousness. It relates to things you might find familiar, including the persona, shadow, and ego, but has several elements of the map of the soul tied to it. As I mentioned earlier, think of it as an in-between space, between realities and consciousness. Okay, I was editing this and I realized I never explained what the collective unconsciousness was, so I'm just going to try to do that now really quickly. The personal unconscious is your own personal unconscious based off of your own personal experiences. The collective unconscious is kind of like an inherited unconscious, essentially the thing that connects all of us together because we all have very similar experiences as a human, as a person, and our understanding of things comes from a similar place, which is the collective unconsciousness, the understanding that like all of us being connected together using things that are universally recognized by people. And of course, this is why I believe that Magic Island is based off of the collective unconsciousness, because the collective unconsciousness is what connects all of us as humans and all of our human experiences together. The same goes for, in the HYBE universe, the Magic Island, which is what the Magic Island's purpose kind of is, basically. I'm not sure if I explained that particularly well. It's a complex idea that can be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but I hope that you kind of have a base understanding of it. They've also chosen to show this as a digital space in several instances, such as the way that Enhypen describe it in some of their VCRs, or how it's frequently depicted in TXT's videos. It's important to note that this place is a real place within this story, even though it is like a reflection of the subconscious mind and it's often depicted as like a video game. I tend to imagine it as like a digital catalog of events that manifests itself in a physical way and that you can actually go to. Kind of the idea of like Digimon or the Matrix, which has actually been referenced before. Those things undeniably exist and can be experienced. So this is where BTS's Magic Shop exists, TXT's Magic Island. By the way, both of these are connected to the location, like the actual physical location in Korea called Tuksum, and is actually like one of the ways to get there. RM's song Reflection also talks about going to Tuksum and reflecting on himself. And of course, TXT are being shown going there directly. There were also previous references from Gfriend where they were traveling in and around that area on trains, which, as I said in my previous video, and trains are very important in this universe because they are how you get to and from Magic Island. We discover this in the Magic Island music video by TXT. And once you start looking for it, you'll notice there's a lot of them taking trains, and they'll end up either in reality or on Magic Island. In Enhypen's case, they seem to be literally walking the line in a digital sense, not just the vampire sense. But ironically, they were also formed because of a show called Island, like Magic Island. Wow. But not only that, but in their intro, Whiteout, they mentioned that they're on the most fantastic island in the world, which just further adds to this theme. And as I also covered in my previous video on this topic, a major facet to getting there without the use of an obvious wormhole follows the steps where you have to close your eyes.
한번 똑바로 앉혀보자. 오케이, 눈 감아. 자, 이거 눈 감고. 오케이. 자, 어떻게? 눈을 감고. 눈을 감고. 이제 하나, 둘, 셋 하면 눈을 감는 걸로. 오케이. 됐어. 자, 하나, 둘, 셋.
This is a BTS VCR from the 5th muster. In it, Jungkook finds a book called The Magic Shop, which then they follow the instructions in the book to get to the magic shop. And we've seen these exact instructions before. In TXT's Sanctuary, there's a conversation that is recorded that says, if you close your eyes and open them, your dreams will come true. And we've seen this happen again and again, especially in the TXT universe. We see it in Runaway, and of course they use it to get to Magic Island in the Magic Island music video. In Gfriend's newest music video, Crossroads, they also do this exact same thing, except in reverse. We see Yeren on the train completely empty, closing her eyes, and then later getting pulled off by Sinbi, but the train has people behind her, so we can assume she was actually coming from Magic Island into reality. And that kind of brings us back to the idea of dreaming. And that, of course, brings us back to the idea of the collective unconsciousness that Carl Jung theorized about. And this is consistently visible not only in the things I've mentioned, but also in Enhypen's outro Wormhole, where they directly quote Shakespeare and say, "When most I wink," which has to do with sleeping and dreaming. So basically, anytime they mention dreams, magic, mentions of at the end of the world, reflections and mirrors, tunnels, or we see trains, and yes, even digital video games. Usually these ideas all tie together into them going into this place, this magical reality, Magic Island. I know it sort of seems to cover like a lot, but that's kind of the point. It allows HYBE to create these incredibly interesting stories that seem like they're in different realities, but have these similar overarching themes and possibly characters, like the infamous cat and the glass beads. So let's just talk about some of these recurring themes now. Let's just start with the obvious recurring character here, the cat. Now, I do think the cat at this moment is just in the TXT and the BTS original story universes. At least that's the only place that it seems to be like an active participator. It's hard to say whether this will appear elsewhere or not yet, just because we don't actually know the ending of TXT's story, where it seems to be the current major active player, and part of me wonders if they're going to defeat the cat in that story. So in terms of its original appearance, it did first appear in BTS's The Notes, and I do think that this cat was based off of Abraxas, specifically the one in Damien, which BTS heavily referenced back in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. As such, I do think it has the possibility of being both good and bad, chaos and law, I guess. And these two opposing sides are possibly represented by the blue and the green galaxy-like eyes that are a staple of this cat or character, because it is shown to be able to shapeshift, but it does keep that blue and green, that feature, no matter what form it is, so we know that that is the same character. This cat seems to be the one who has given Jin his time travel abilities. I say ability because it does seem involuntary, but this is represented by the glass breaking every single time that he goes through reality and returns to his point. So when he goes back in time, it breaks the reality, and we see that with a glass breaking, or he hears glass breaking. This is a consistency, I think, in the universe, by the way. I explained this in a lot more detail in my Film Out Explained video, but basically TXT are exempt because they're rewinding the same timeline, and Jin and Enhypen are literally crashing through reality. As I mentioned though, this ability is completely involuntary on Jin's part, and it's implied that it's gonna stop once he finds the map of the soul, which has to do with memories. Basically, the cat enters a contract with Jin that gives him this power to allow him to save his friends. The cat also seems to have something to do with Jungkook in the BTS universe, because it appears before him several times, although we don't know why. They didn't actually tell us why, although there's obviously speculation. Currently, it's unexplained, so hopefully they tell us at some point. It's possible that he also made a contract with the cat, but it's unclear right now, so. In TXT's universe, the cat does seem to do something really similar. It's being shown making contract several times with Yeonjun. However, the difference is that while Jin seems to be trying to save his friends, Yeonjun is the one who needs to be saved from destruction, possibly because of the contract. He's very prone to sacrificing himself, and his friends are like, yo, stop. The story's going the opposite way, with the other people trying to save Yeonjun, because he is the one who made the contract. As such, I think it's really hard to tell how good or bad this cat is, and again, it might not be necessarily either. And as I said, I think it's possible that TXT defeat it in a way, which maybe means it won't appear again. That is not confirmed, by the way. That is just me completely speculating about the ending of TXT's story. But that could be a reason why it hasn't yet appeared in another universe. Although there are sort of hints that it might be there. And it's possible that maybe it'll pop up shortly in another universe and I'll be like, never mind. TXT doesn't take them out. There are several different interpretations of the cat beyond this, by the way. But I think as long as you understand that the cat has opposite sides and opposing ideas encompassing it, then you're on the right track. Also, I just wanted to say it's possible there's more than one cat. We have hints that there's more than one cat. A cat with the eyes swapped, and there might be 2 cats in Nap of a Star. So yeah, there might be more than one of them, so just something to think about. We'll just have to wait and see. Another major recurring aspect in the HYBE universe are the glass beads. These beads first appeared in Gfriend's story and were a major part in it. In Gfriend's lore, the glass beads were something that the girls on this island were born with. It seems intrinsically tied with both of them as people and then also possibly the powers that they get, because it does seem tied to like how they use their powers later, but the main aspect of the beads is actually that it's tied to memories. Now, credit for this particular part of the theory goes out to Lame Game Hero, who is one of my friends and a patron on this channel. She is the one that connected the idea of glass beads and memory, so credits to her. Basically, these beads can be damaged or corrupted, as we see happening in Gfriend's story. For them, it happens incrementally every time they use the power of the blue butterflies to turn back time. This is depicted as the black bead itself becoming slowly darker and darker until it is completely black. And once it's completely dark, a witch takes over. And this causes them to, surprise, surprise, lose all their memories. They forget everything, and then they're just simply seeking out revenge for the ones who turned them this way. This is how it was depicted in the fairy tale version of their story. But this aspect of them being tied to memories carries over to the other universes. With TXT, in the Frost music video, we also saw Subin using a glass bead, and he's kind of like looking at the memories of when they first arrived on the island. And likely the power of that memory also was used to open up the wormhole to Magic Island in the first place as well. I talk about that a little bit more in the Frost Explained video, so you can watch that by clicking the card. In BTS, we've only ever seen these beads in like a VCR, and it did seem to tie the boys together somehow, but I actually also believe that the design for the Wings like album is like the glass beads. It shows the damage that is being made to them from their memories and from their experiences that is like permanently damaging these like circles that we're seeing, the glass bead. It's their pain, essentially, which pretty much defines the entirety of the Wings era. Finally, we also see Enhypen with these beads in some of their concept photos for Border Day 1, the Dusk version, but beyond being present, they haven't actually done anything with them yet. I'll be interested in seeing like if they come back or not. So, the beads reflect their memories and experiences, and maybe their souls. But you know what else reflects things? Mirrors. So, in the strictest sense, like, mirrors are not a recurring theme, but it's more what they mean in like a psychological and philosophical way, and that makes me sound really pretentious. But no, stay with me. I promise it is not that bad. The idea of reflection on the self is a really important theme in HYBE throughout all of their stories. I mean, BTS literally has the map of the soul, which is all about basically like self-reflection and self-actualization and, you know, becoming your own person. So when they show a strong focus on mirrors in their VCRs, it's definitely meant to imply that there's like a deeper thinking going on, that they're seeing themselves in a metaphorical sense within the psyche. Although sometimes it actually might be more literal, like with Kai in the Frost music video for TXT. There's also the fact that mirrors seem to tie to Magic Island, and as I mentioned, it's like a dream, and a dream is basically a reflection of your everyday reality, what you're going through, and your psyche again. So it's just like reflecting reality as your mind is processing information. But to go further with this upon the idea of reflection, HYBE covers a lot of other philosophical ideas, such as the idea of the labyrinth representing the mind. So basically you enter the labyrinth of your mind to achieve self-actualization. You go through the whole of the labyrinth, you go all the way around, going and exploring all of its different parts, and you come out as a like full person, having explored all parts of yourself. And it is specifically a labyrinth, by the way, since in theory, a maze has several entrances and exits, and a labyrinth only has the one to enter and exit, and there's only one way in and one way out. But sometimes mazed is used instead. Labyrinth is just more accurate. But this is actually shown several times physically as well. Gfriend is a good example of this. They literally were running through the labyrinth. BTS's Young Forever music video had them basically running through what looked like a labyrinth. And like I said, TXT, while they don't have a visual, they do have that song, Maze in the Mirror. And while Enhypen don't seem to have a labyrinth per se, they've been shown in the forest, which again is tied to Magic Island and that idea of the labyrinth. There are several fictional depictions of the labyrinth entrance being in a forest, so that's just something to consider. Think of Kafka on the Shore. But this just further adds to the idea that in every story, they're trying to achieve their own form of self-actualization, and it's just like showing different ideas of how to go about this, and they're becoming like that whole person that was so defined by Carl Jung's research, which they really seem to love. His research for self-actualization, by the way, was actually based off of the Philosopher's Stone, which is actually the specific process that I think TXT is using to undergo this self-actualization. Basically, some people, especially philosophers like Carl Jung, believed that the idea of the Philosopher's Stone was never to actually make, turn metal into gold. It was always to have an internal process within yourself to achieve the process of magnum opus and Philosopher's Stone within your own body, within your own mind. So it was always outlining the way to become yourself. And these are really complex practices, by the way. Like the map of the soul itself is just looking at it, you can see there's a lot of steps, there's a lot of processes and things that are highlighted. I'm not going to get too into depth about how it works here because there's a lot, and I'm sure other people have explained it better than I could. And to be honest, I'm kind of hoping that you have a basic understanding of the map of the soul because of BTS. Just understand that it's basically a deconstruction of yourself and then recreation of yourself using all parts of your mind. Becoming a whole person by accepting your flaws, accepting the shadow parts of you, as well as your desires and the things that make you good and unique. Yeah, summing up psychological ideas in a couple sentences is really scary, so that's just the basics. But hopefully you kind of understand. I know there's a lot of focus on Carl Jung, but they have covered things from other philosophers before as well, maybe just in a different way, less obvious, like Nietzsche, who was quoted saying, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star," which basically refers to your chaos, your individual self and your creativity and stuff that isn't necessarily within the borders of human acceptance and our current understanding. The idea that you can give birth to a dancing star is just your own contribution into the world. I think that's very on theme for these stories, just in different ways. Also, the language used in this particular quote is very on point for TXT's whole story, which just had the Chaos chapter, and remember, they're called the Star Seekers. So I'll be interested to see who else they kind of quote and use in the future, since they like incorporating lots of different media. The other major connection that I wanted to talk about was the similarity between mythology, specifically Greek mythology. And I think it's nearly come up in every single group so far, and I'm sure it will again. BTS have referenced Greek gods and mythology several times before in their music videos, like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. These Singularity is possibly a reference to Narcissus in performances, and then literally having a song called Dionysus. In Enhypen, their recent album was also actually based off of a mythology tale surrounding specifically Odysseus, where he faces these two monsters, Scylla and Charybdis. And for TXT, in their Frost music video, one of the locations is described as a burning ancient city, which looks a lot like it's been inspired by the architecture of either Roman or Greek, along with possibly referencing Pandora's box. And actually, even with Gfriend, a lot of people compared them to Ariadne because they have a lot of focus on, labyrinths and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, I mentioned this in my previous video as well, Ariadne marries Dionysus, which brings us right back around. to BTS. So there's definitely like a theme with them referencing mythology. And actually, BTS's new story, Seven Fates Chakol, is apparently based off of Korean mythology. So they're very clearly inspired by all of these different stories. And I think we can expect to see more in the future as well. I think they tend to pick mythology so consistently because like it's so familiar to people, but then they take the idea and they change it. So it's not just the same mythological idea that you expect, but there's something different about it, that they're like modernizing it or bringing in just new elements altogether. You know, it just changes up your expectations because we're like, oh, well, clearly they're gonna go with this thing because this is what happened in mythology. But sometimes they're like, but what if they did this instead? I can't wait to see more connections related to this in the future. There are more connections beyond this, of course. This is hardly an exhaustive list, but I did try to include like the major ones here for you today that I think will come back. However, if you think that I missed something major, please let me know in the comments below, and hopefully we can like boost it upwards so more people see, because I don't doubt that I've missed stuff. I know I've purposefully omitted stuff from this video just for time reasons, so. But yes, if you did like this video, if it helped you out or made you more excited for HYBE's stories, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up to help me for the YouTube algorithm. Make sure that you're subscribed with notifications turned on so that YouTube tells you every single time that I post a new video. All of my social media, including my Discord server, is linked in the description below, so make sure you check those out. And of course, I want to give a shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your support. And as it is, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay sunny, everyone. Bye!